Thank you for the introduction, moderator, and good day to all the participants of the workshop. First of all, I would like to thank to the government of the Republic of Korea and the World Maritime University for organizing this fourth session of the CAFFIX project, and for giving me another opportunity to share with you the Spanish experience and perspective on the implementation of the 2012 Cape Town Agreement. A catfish project is fully in line with the Spanish government's views on that a joint approach by UN bodies and other stakeholders is necessary to increase the safety of fishing vessels and to prevent illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. As many other relevant stakeholders, Spain also considers that the entry into force of the Cape Town Agreement would fill a critical gap in the global regulatory framework, mandating minimum safety measures for fishing vessels, creating a more robust IMO regulatory framework for the safety of fishers and fishing vessels. Therefore, this new workshop offers another very good opportunity to bring together different expert groups to stress once again the urgent need for IMO member states to consider ratifying the Cape Town Agreement as soon as possible. This key international treaty applicable to large industrial fishing vessels aiming at providing safety standards, just as the SOLAS Convention does for commercial ships. Despite extensive effort by IMO member states, other UN agencies, observers, and the own IMO Secretariat, the agreement is not yet in force. As a result, there are as yet no globally mandatory requirements for the design, construction, and equipment of fishing vessels, including life-saving, fire protection, and radio communication equipment to carry on board. As you may see in the screen, these would be the points I would like to touch upon during my presentation. I will let you know very briefly the main features of the Spanish fishing industry to have a slight idea of the interest of the Spanish fishing sector. We also try to cover what the ratification of the agreement meant for Spain. We will try to highlight some examples of joint efforts with the ratification of the agreement, such as the Torremolinos Ministerial Conference, the guidance to assist competent authorities when it comes to the implementation of the agreement, and the IMO Assembly Resolution 1161. And also how is the national implementation in Spain with regard to the agreement, what is the legislative framework in Spain regarding this safety issue for fishing vessels. And finally, I will address some capacity building activities related to the implementation of the agreement that had been promoted by Spain together with the IMO. So let's start with the presentation. In Spain, the fisheries industry is considered a highly profile, highly competitive sector with potential for future development, as demonstrated by the indicator of the construction of a state-of-the-art fishing vessel. Spain's commitment to adopting sustainable fishing practice and the improvements introduction by the new European Union fishery policy. The Spanish fishing industry interacts with a multitude of economic sectors: naval construction, processing and commercialization, manufacture of tackle and equipment, technology development, storage, and port activities. Spain is one of the leading producer countries of fish goods in the European Union. We are the #1 European Union country in terms of the number of jobs in the fisheries sector, and we rank first place in terms of gross added value in the fishing segment. With this long-standing tradition on fishing, we are one of the main international players in the fishing industry. Spain is also globally recognized for its commitment to undertaking its activities in a responsible, sustainable, and duly regulated manner, although we have some examples raised by Dahia recently on really bad practices from some member of the fishing industry in Spain. When it comes to the accession of Spain to the 2012 Cape Town Agreement, I would like to recall that Spain accessed to the International Maritime Organization Cape Town Agreement on fishing vessel safety in February 2019, so just 4 years ago, significantly boosting the number of vessels needed for entry into force at that time. The accession by Spain to the agreement marked a new period on the promotion of the benefits of the entry into force of the agreement, as IMO and Spain agreed at that time on co-hosting a conference on fishing vessel safety and IUU fishing in Spain. The purpose of the conference was to promote the ratification of the Cape Town Agreement on the implementation of the provision of the Torremolinos Protocol of 1993 relating to the Torremolinos International Convention of 1977, and to deter the proliferation of the IUU fishing by establishing international safety standards for fishing vessels. In terms of different examples of joint efforts, you may see some of the main important examples, such the Torremolinos Ministerial Conference. The conference was co-hosted by the IMO, the government of Spain, with the kind support of the FAO and the Pew Charitable Trust. The Torremolinos Conference has been the largest fishing vessel conference held in the history of the IMO. Took place in October 2019, attended by some 125 states, 70 ministerial level representatives, 30 international organizations, and over 500 delegates. During the conference, the Torremolinos Declaration was signed by 48 states, now rising to 51 states, publicly indicating the commitment and determination to ratify the agreement to enable its entry into force on the occasion of the 10th anniversary of the adoption, in October 2022, as well as taking action to ensure entry into force. States signing the Torremolinos Declaration pledged to promote the agreement, recognizing that the ultimate effectiveness of the instrument depends on the widespread support of states in their capacity as flag states, port states, and coastal states. They also denounce in this declaration the proliferation of IUU fishing recognizing that international safety standards for fishing vessels will provide port states with a mandatory instrument to carry out safety inspection of fishing vessels, thereby increasing control and transparency of the fishing activities. The conference also adopted the Torremolinos Statement on the Cape Town Agreement and combating IUU fishing. The statement highlights the importance of the Cape Town Agreement and the work on combating IUU fishing. It calls on a state to ratify the agreement, urge to take action to prevent and deter and eliminate IUU fishing, encourage a state to ratify and promote the STCWF Convention on training of fishing vessel personnel, and also calls upon FAO, ILO, and IMO to continue to work together in the fishing sectors, and particular to IMO to continue to provide technical assistance to those member states who request help and need in order to accede and implement the Cape Town Agreement. Being aware of the challenge to meet this ambitious but essential goal, and considering that states that are planning to deposit an instrument of ratification would benefit of a set of guidance that address the issue related to the implementation of the agreement, Spain, together with other relevant stakeholders, continues to promote measures related to the agreement. In December 2020, Spain started coordinating a group of interested parties to develop draft guidance to assist competent authorities in the implementation of the Cape Town Agreement. Unfortunately, and due to the limitation in the conduction of the IMO meetings during the COVID-19 pandemics, this guidance has not been finalized yet, mainly because the relevant organ of the IMO, in particular the Maritime Safety Committee, could not consider in depth this proposal because the time constraint on the IMO meetings over the pandemic period. Let me briefly touch upon the main areas of the tasks of the group when it comes to the guidance to assist competent authorities. The group focused its work on drafting guidance to assist governments in developing and enacting domestic laws to implement the agreement. Guiding principle of IIIE code and a wide approach has been adopted when drafting the guidance in order to cover all aspects of the implementation of the agreement. I mean, the role a member state may have as a flag state, coastal state, and port state control. With regards to the scope of the guidance, this scope includes a description of general aspects, the legal status of the agreement, and a list of sections and technical annexes that allow for a better understanding of the agreement. It is important to highlight that the Cape Town Agreement offers a wide range of flexibility in terms of implementation, and the draft guidance provide particular information on those options, particularly those related to the progressive implementation, exemption, surveys, and certification. In this first stage, the draft guidance has been focused on developing aspects of the agreement applicable to existing fishing vessels, since this particular segment of the fishing fleet will require the broadest consideration prior to the ratification by interested member states. Finally, let me give you some updates on the development of the guidance within the work of the IMO. During the last session of the Maritime Safety Committee held in November 2022, the committee considered the proposal to develop guidance in order to assist competent authorities in the implementation of the Cape Town Agreement. And during the discussion, there was an overwhelming support to the proposal to develop this guidance, and consequently, the committee agreed to include in the biennial agenda of the III subcommittee for 2022-2023, and the provisional agenda for the 9th session of the III subcommittee, an output on development of guidance to assist competent authorities in the implementation of the Cape Town Agreement, with a completion year of 2024. The committee also agreed another important consideration and recommendation, that the scope of the guidance should be limited to matters under the purview of the IMO only. Taking into account the decision made by the Maritime Safety Committee, the group of interested parties reconvenes its work early this year with the view to submit an updated version of the draft guidance to facilitate official discussion to be held at III 9. The group is working now based on a work program that was agreed last week, which includes action to undertake a comprehensive revision of the current text to get a final text fully in line with the agreement, based on the recommendation made during the last session of the Maritime Safety Committee that the guidance should be limited to matters under the purview of the IMO only. A new document containing this update version of the guidance will be submitted to III 9 by April this year, the deadline for submission of bulky papers to this session of the III subcommittee. And the intention is that this new text may be used as a base document when starting official discussion, probably in a working group at the end of July this year. Another example of joint efforts towards the ratification of the Cape Town Agreement is the resolution of the IMO Assembly 1161 on the entry into force and implementation of the Cape Town Agreement on Fishing Vessel Safety. The resolution urged governments that have not yet become parties to the agreement to consider doing so by October 2022, the 10th anniversary of the agreement's adoption. This date was in line and reflect the commitment that was reached during the Torremolinos conference. The resolution invites governments which experience difficulties in the process of becoming parties of the agreement to inform the IMO on the circumstances thereof, so that consideration can be given to taking appropriate actions in this respect, including providing necessary technical and legal assistance. The resolution also encourages member states with technical and legal expertise on matters related to the fishing vessel safety to provide technical and legal assistance on the said matters to states that are seeking such assistance. And lastly, the resolution recognized the efforts and contribution made by member states, FAO, ILO, and the Pew Charitable Trust to support the regional and national seminars and webinars which had been held in all regions of the world since 2014 to promote the implementation and to increase the awareness of the agreement. With regard to the national implementation of the Cape Town Agreement in Spain, this issue is already covered in the European Union by a regional legislation, such as the European Council Directive 97/10 of 1997, setting up a harmonized safety regime for fishing vessels of 20 meters in length and over. The purpose of the directive is to lay down safety standards for seagoing fishing vessels of 24 meters in length and over, both new and existing, flying the flag of a European Union member state and registered in the community, or operating in the internal water or territorial water of a member state, or landing their cargo in the port of a European member state. It is important to note the complexity in terms of implementation of both the Torremolinos International Convention of 1977 and the 1993 Torremolinos Protocol relating to the convention. The Cape Town Agreement prepared and adopted by the IMO following intensive discussion over a 5-period year replaces both the 1977 Torremolinos Convention and the 1993 Torremolinos Protocol, with an updated provision that address previously encountered technical and legal difficulties and paves the way for facilitating the entry into force. Spain, as a member of the European Union, have already incorporated and implemented a more stringent safety requirements than those provided in the Cape Town Agreement by national legislation, which brought into force the regulation complying with this European Union directive. Therefore, only minor administrative issues related to the certification will have to be addressed by Spain once the Cape Town Agreement entry into force. The last part of the presentation is related to the capacity building activities and technical cooperation offered by Spain in the field of the Cape Town Agreement. Promoting online training programs represents a real possibility for assisting member states in the execution of their obligations and responsibilities under the whole IMO mandatory instruments, providing more specific support for implementing this instrument. This is the general understanding Spain have on how a member state may be supported when it comes to the implementation of one simple IMO instrument. We develop a specific online training program for the implementation of the 2012 Cape Town Agreement. This program is addressed to a staff of administration with management, operational and inspection responsibilities for fishing vessels on the ratification and implementation of the agreement. Spain, together with the IMO Technical Cooperation Divisions, have organized 2 sessions of these online training courses on the Cape Town Agreement in Latin American region, where more than 50 experts could benefit of this capacity building activity. The Spanish Maritime Administrations will offer 2 new online sessions of this program. In 2023, the first English version of this program will be available for the second half of 2023 for maritime experts in the Caribbean region. We will continue working together with the IMO to promote capacity building and technical cooperation activities worldwide to increase the awareness of the benefits of becoming party of the agreement, as well as providing assistance on the implementation of the convention. I would like to conclude my presentation by giving you an update on ratification news. Belize and Japan will deposit soon their instruments of the ratification to the IMO Secretary General. And we also have very interesting news coming from Portugal. They are facing the last step in the national procedures for presenting the instrument of ratification to the IMO. And we are looking forward to receiving more good news at this coming from Belize and Japan, for example, from the government of the Republic of Korea very soon, with the view to finally meet the goal of having 22 member states party of the agreement, as the requirement for the interforce requires. Thank you very much for your attention, and free to address question if any. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Victor. It's great to hear about all Spain's initiatives to bring the Cape Town Agreement into force, and very heartening to hear about the ratifications coming up. Yep, so we do have some time for questions. So I'm going to open up the floor now. If anyone has a question for Victor. Medina.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I was wondering about the training that you are giving online. It is much followed, and have you assessed them? Are people very involved during the training online, and is it well functioning? This is my question. And when do you think maybe you will come in Africa for the CTA also session, and how do you plan to give this kind of training? Thank you.
Thank you for your questions. For providing these kind of online training courses, we use a virtual platform that has been used by the Spanish Maritime Training Center that is belong to the Spanish Maritime Safety Agency. This is a very highly qualified maritime training center. It's located in the north of Spain, and we use this virtual platform that allow students to be in touch with the experts that are offering the training in on time and real session. So the programs cover different sections that may be addressed by the student himself, and then we have different on-time lectures provided by the professors and the experts in Spain, joining to the virtual campus and the virtual platform. The students may the possibility to be in touch over the training period with the professors and experts in Spain. So that's respond your first question. When it comes to the further sessions, the programs in particular in Africa, We hopefully will be able to offer this possibility in 2024. We are now scheduling the whole year, not only within Spain administration, but also with the IMO, and we need to adjust some dates. But hopefully, the first English version of the training program will be available in October. I guess that early 2024 we will be able to organize regional online training programs in Africa.
Great. Are there more questions? Yes, first Ife and then Rafael.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I have a question relating to implementation. I know it's not yet in force, but I also know that a lot of the issues we have with all these resolutions or global regulations is that people sign up. The problem of implementation or enforcement is then an issue. Are there examples of plans that are in place to support when this comes into force, to support countries in the global south, for example, to be better able to implement it? Thank you.
Yes, as I mentioned during my presentation, being aware of the difficulties of the implementation of the agreement, not only the Cape Town Agreement, every single mandatory IMO instrument has implication when it comes to the implementation in the national law and enforcement. Being aware of this need, we started working in 2020 to provide a guidance to assist government on the implementation of the Cape Town Agreement. This guidance will be officially addressed by the IMO after the approval of the Maritime Safety Committee of a new output to deliver this tax. This new output was approved in November 2022. There is an IMO subcommittee, III subcommittee, that is the proper IMO body to deal with this guidance. So in July we will start officially to consider and to draft this guidance with the view to be finalized in 2024. So this is the best example of having a tool that may assist government when it comes to the implementation of the agreement. Not only having the agreement, the provision included in the agreement, but have a practical tool to guide the governments to develop national legislation to implement the agreement in the national level.
Rafael, you want to ask your question?
Thank you very much, Victor, for this very interesting presentation and to see all the work done by Spain on the promotion of the Cape Town Agreement. I have two questions, in fact, if you don't mind. It's very much on your capacity building strategy and its future. My first question is about your current promotion of the Cape Town Agreement. And do you plan to include also STCWF as an IMO-related capacity building? So this is my first question. And my second question is here a little bit broader, is to see if in terms of capacity building, you intend, in addition to the IMO-related instruments, to include also what has been done jointly with ILO and FAO. I'm thinking more about the fishing vessel safety of small-size fishing vessels. Do you intend also to have this new capacity building, or you stay more on this Cape Town Agreement? Thank you.
Thank you, Rafael, for the questions. Spain, together with many other relevant IMO member states, have participated very actively in the revision of the STCWF convention that has been finalized during the last session of the STCW subcommittee last week. The revision of this STCWF convention has already finalized. We need to see how is going to be the next step at the IMO level regarding to the STCWF convention, and then try to develop some new capacity building activities. But we would like to see the final amendments the convention will have after this review process before starting to develop a new capacity building activities in this field. With regard to the second question, we are now focused on the Cape Town Agreement only. And this is because the consideration at the level of the Maritime Safety Committee, as I mentioned before during the presentation, the Maritime Safety Committee consider that this kind of guidance to be developed on the implementation of the Cape Town Agreement should be focused only under the IMO instruments only. I know that the fishing issue is interlinked with other relevant UN organizations, ILO and FAO, but for the time being and considering how is the discussion at the IMO right now, we feel that it's better to be focused only on the Cape Town Agreement field.
Thank you. We are almost out of time, so I think let's take one more question from Brandt, and then we can go to lunch.
Yeah, hi, thanks. Brant Wagner, ILO, and I'm on the panel later. So I had an observation and kind of a question. One, the observation is you mentioned training on Convention 188. The ILO has done a substantial amount of material on that. And I don't know, I think Selwyn Bailey, my good friend Selwyn's going to talk about Convention number 188 later in South Africa. But the ILO itself has developed a lot of material. Maybe I'll try to bring that up on the panel discussion on Convention 180, including in Spanish. And also, I was talking to, we know that actually Spain is going to ratify the fishing convention by the end of this month. And then I just noted something, and that was in the presentation and in the discussions, we look at the international, the binding international instruments, the Cape Town Agreement, the Port State Measures Agreement, ILO Convention number 188, and actually none of those instruments, as far as I can see, make a reference to artisanal fishing and industrial fishing. Yet a lot of our discussion about IUU fishing, we keep talking about that, artisanal fishing and industrial fishing, but the international instruments themselves don't use those terms. So that's something, and when the ILO did this, we had problem with the definition of artisanal fishing because there are some countries with very, very large artisanal fishing vessels. So I just make that observation as well. So I guess that's not really a question. I'm sorry about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Brant.
Would you like to respond, Victor, or just leave it?
No, I think...
Okay, yeah, I mean, just from my perspective, because on small-scale fishing, of course, it's very difficult to find a definition in international agreements. It's been a massive problem in the WTO fisheries subsidies negotiations too. Great, okay. Well, thank you very much, Victor.
Thank you to you.
Yep.
Bye-bye.